So my topic was on crime rate in Canada over the past 10 years. The question I asked was which crimes have increased and decreased over time, and whether crimes are more predominant and what crimes exactly. In my thesis, I stated that I'm not really sure what results I will see, but I would hope there would be a decrease in the crime rates, but I don't think that's what I will find out. For the procedure, I collected data to get my final conclusion. The information I researched was put into graphs so I can interpret the data myself. As well, I did some calculations to discover the final result. So what I discovered that the crime rate in Newfoundland and Labrador has a big difference between the types of crimes. For example, homicide has only at least 3, and then attempted murder is 4, but then you see the property crime and theft have a really high number. And I found this information on Stat Canada, and since we have a large sample size, you don't have to worry about outliers. So the next thing I found out was the male versus female crime rate from 1990 to 2003. So I did the calculation, and then I made a scatter plot, and the scatter plot is an example of a strong positive correlation. So this graph is an example of a common cause factor due to the two variables changing as the same way. It also could be an example of a cause and effect relationship. But as you see that the majority of females have a low crime rate, and then the males have it higher, and over time it relatively stays the same. Like it changes in a way, but not as much. And then the next thing I did was the crime rate by age. So it went from 12 to 14 all the way up to 55 and over. And then we did it from just males and Vancouver. And in Vancouver, so we found out the majority of the people that did the crimes were 15 to 17, and that was in 1996. And then next I did a scatter plot on violent crimes through 1990 to 2004. I did it in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Yukon. So what I discovered was that the crimes in Yukon is relatively high compared to Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And the scatter plot I showed you is an example of a strong positive correlation, but I got these results showing that like the crime is worse in Yukon, and it really like makes you think about why it's that way. And another thing I did was the total crime code. So I figured out that the mean was 8,516 and the standard deviation was 805.01. And you can tell that over time the crime's just increasing. Like it went from 10,000 to 8,000, but it started to decrease. But the last year, 2003, it went up again. So we don't know the variables for that reason. But as you see, that there's a problem. Then the next thing I did was Quebec versus Ontario crimes. So the Quebec crimes are lower than the Ontario crimes, and you can tell by the bar graph that I made. The Ontario seems to always have a higher rate than Quebec does, and there's no example of Quebec overpowering Ontario, but I would say this is because Ontario has a higher population, so the sample size would be impacted. So the next chart I did was all violations in Quebec, Ontario, Newfoundland and Labrador, New Brunswick, PEI, and Nova Scotia. And out of all those places, Ontario had the highest crime rate violation. You can see that PEI has the lowest crime rate for the violations. This could be because it has the least population and it doesn't have the highest chance of getting as much as crime as any other place. So for my conclusion, analyzing all the information I found really gave me insight onto the crime rates in Canada. It really showed what crimes are higher than other crimes and in what areas they're more predominant. For example, PEI, they have a very low crime rate compared to all the other places, and Ontario is also higher than Quebec's crime rate. And it's really weird to think about because sometimes the crime has increased, sometimes it's decreased, but we don't know the reasons for this. We don't know if it's just going to get worse over the years or if it's going to get better. But I think that this project really made me think about the crimes and how if we think about it more, then like there's reasons behind all of this, and we just have to do more research. So for my future consideration, if I were to do this project again, I would stick to one area. So say I would do Quebec, and I would just stick to the crimes in Quebec and what more people like do it, like more females, more males, what ages do these certain crimes, and then I would get the results from there and I would figure it out. So that's all. Thank you.